Cool.
And that hot girl walked by, and I was like, I probably look stupid, but that's all right because I know her boyfriend. Her boyfriend's way better looking than I am, and he drives an Audi, so I knew I didn't have a chance. And that's the story of how I put on my shoes earlier today.
Riveting.
Hello, Cinema Brawls. We're Internet. I'm Jake, and this is Daniel, and this is Matt. We are here out of obligation, not necessarily enjoyment, but let's get it on.
I enjoy it.
I do have a few hours left of community service. Today we're talking about The Blind Side, directed by John Lee Hancock. Came out in 2009 and stars Quentin Aaron and Sandra Bullock.
And Seven, which came out in 1995, is directed by David Fincher and stars Brad Pitt, Morgan Freeman, and Kevin
Spacey.
There
you go.
Sorry, I spaced it.
I see what you did there. Yep. Let's
The puns about.
I hate you so
let's make like a Marvin Gaye and get it on. On your mark, you set, bro. Let's start with our first impressions. Why don't you go ahead and start, Jake?
First impressions, they're two obviously very different movies. One is about a mother who takes in a foster child, basically, and helps him with his dream of playing football. Mm-hmm. The other is about a psychopathic murderer who murders people according to the 7 deadly sins.
Hence the name Seven.
Hence the name Seven.
Seven.
Sorry, what was that? What did you call it?
Seven.
Okay. Anyway, personally, I think they're both really good movies. But if I had to pick one to come out on top, I would pick Blind Side.
Interesting.
Simply because I enjoyed the type of movie it is more. I think that it had a lot more feeling and emotion that went into it. And I think that in this particular case, that emotion and feeling and characterization of those characters is what's going to pull us out on top.
I disagree. I do like both. I mean, they're both great. They're both good stories. Blindside is a little bit more straightforward, but yeah, a lot more heartfelt. Seven is interesting, but like super weird. And I'll get into more of I'll expand on that a little bit more later. I don't know. I just would rather watch Seven more. And so I think that one will win. Those are my first impressions.
Ditto. Yeah, I'm probably gonna go with Seven.
For no real reason. All right, let's get into it.
I mean, it's comparing apples and oranges. Do I want to watch this really good, feel-good movie to help me feel better about myself, or would I rather watch Blind Side? Probably the first one.
These are both very different movies that really shouldn't be compared to each other. That's the whole point our channel exists, because we're going to compare those.
Not laughing.
You're a dork. Let's get right into it. Let's start with the story. Here's where I will, as previously mentioned, expound on why I think this movie is weird. Because it's fetching weird.
I like how the wide-angle lens, your head gets like huge.
The thing, and the problem I kind of have with David Fincher and a lot of the movies he makes is, where do these ideas come from? But it is entertaining.
Yeah, I like the story of Seven, but I think in fairness, Blind Side does have a good, heartfelt story that's based on real life, and it's important for white people to feel good about themselves every now and again.
It had a lot more than just white people in it.
I know, but it was the white people who saved the day. and got him to fulfill his dreams. If it wasn't for the white people, he wouldn't have done it.
I disagree. I think they were there to help, but ultimately, he came out on top.
Same reason why I don't like the help.
All right. The Blind Side. Well, let's start with 7. 7 has a pretty consistent, detective type storyline where, Morgan Freeman and Brad Pitt are basically trying to solve crimes. And besides the gimmick of the 7 deadly sins, it kind of follows that basic storytelling, that
It's a procedural cop show.
Yeah, that you see all the time, which is fine. And it has a twist ending, which is cool.
Until the last 10 minutes.
But The Blind Side, Daniel just said it, is more heartfelt story with a little bit more emotion and humanity thrown into it. Something that we don't really see every day with a family, taking in the foster child who is, shy, athletically talented, and they kind of like help him pursue his goals and then help him overcome some of the things that come with being a foster child, which I think is really interesting. Overall, I feel like the story was more unique in The Blind Side. It had a lot more everything behind it, and had to be more thought out and was scripted better than 7 was.
I disagree with every word that came out of his mouth. But I still love you. You're still a great person.
Every word,
you
huh?
know that. Yeah.
Every word.
Every single one.
That's weird because you agreed with some of it as I said it, which makes you a liar.
You're right. The Blind Side, compared to those other feel-good, inspirational, and/or sports movies, however you want to classify it, I think Blind Side is the best, and I think that is because of its story and characters.
Really? There are some inspirational sports movies I find better than The Blind Side.
Well, I'm not saying just sports. I'm saying, Blind Side has sports things, but it also has other things from other genres.
Right.
There are
which is something I think unique.
Yeah. No, fun fact. Sandra Bullock was nominated for an Oscar for Best Supporting Actress for The Blind Side, the same year that she was nominated for a Razzie as the Worst Actress of the Year for another movie. I can't remember which one it was, though.
Something bad, I'm sure.
Probably Blind Side. No, I'm kidding.
Probably The Blind Side.
I'm totally kidding.
The point is...
I think the story is better in Blind Side compared to other movies like that, but I don't know. I'm more interested in 7.
Yeah,
Blind Side has other
but-
aspects that I would rather put over 7, but not story.
No, I think you like the story. You admit that the story of Blind Side is better than the basic one of 7. You just think 7 is more rewatchable.
No, I was saying Blind Side has a better story than other feel-good movies like it. I am more interested in the story of 7.
Right, you're more interested in it. That doesn't make it better. That's what I'm saying. You're
That's
more...
kind of what the basis of wanting something to be better is.
Not
Being
necessarily.
more interested in it.
Because that's just your preference of genre. Obviously, it's more rewatchable to you.
It is.
But that I would say that the story has so much more going for it in Blind Side than it ever could in 7.
All About Steve was what she was nominated for a Razzie for.
Thank you, Daniel.
Which, like I said, 7 was a basic, kind of already done story before that had a gimmick to it that hadn't been done.
And that's an interesting thing, because I think that there's a good there's a lot of good things with structure, and it's good to have that structure. And I think what you're talking about is that story structure, not necessarily the story itself, but the story structure of kind of that procedural cop show that has been done before and has been done in so many different ways. And that structure is a great way to have that jumping off point of have it being, it's basic, it's like the cop's point of view in a Saw movie, like this is a guy that's so intensely religious that he's killing people because of it, and how he's killing those people is meaningful to him, and trying to piece that together and having it be so visceral and gross and disturbing in that way hasn't been done before, and I would argue hasn't been done at least well since. And because of that, I like that story structure. I do think that The Blind Side is a great real life story, and I think that it's awesome that people get to rise above their means. However, in movie format, I think that how the story is structured and how it plays out is better in Seven than in Blind Side.
I will admit, both movies are kind of slow in that Act 2 range. I think the pacing on both is like, okay, like we've got the premise, we know what their goals are, let's get going to that part, you know? Because Seven had other movie-making things that set it apart from the other procedural cop formats, and Blind Side had a better way of telling the same inspirational, feel-good family story. I just totally made my own decision in that one sentence. I'll vote Blind Side for the story.
I mean, I'm voting Seven, but
I'm gonna vote Blindside.
okay. Well,
Let's
Blind
move
Side
on.
won't start.
Two characters.
Do you want to take this one?
I mean,
Can I say something?
sure, of course.
I said I don't love you, and that was really hard for me to not take back, but I have to now. I do love you.
Brett.
I'm sorry.
I love you too.
I do. Alright. Characters.
I'll start with characters. The characters on both are so generic, I think.
Generic.
Yes, generic.
Oh man.
I feel like you
Alright.
said that. I agree with that thing in the way you just said it, but I feel like you said it for the wrong movie.
Let's
Well, I mean for both, really.
let's look at it this way. Or let me try to explain my thought process here. Besides the case they're on specifically, what separates these cops from other cops? Why did it have to be these cops? I just don't think they're terribly stand out-ish. Brad Pitt is, because you dive more into his backstory and you
And
see
he's
his
hot.
wife and family and struggles outside of work, and it makes him more of a prime candidate for John Doe. And John Doe is a good villain because we go see our villains bracket where he goes pretty far. But I don't know, I just feel like, again, it runs through the procedural cop format, even with the characters. Blindside, I lived in the South for a few years, and Sandra Bullock plays it well, but she is just like every other Southern mom down there. Pretentious, sassy, but a good heart at the end of the day. And I really like...
I'd argue against the good heart, but whatever.
Oh yeah, 'cause
So-
I'm sure you've done so many things just as well as that mother had.
Oh, absolutely not. No.
I'm forgetting.
Absolutely
I'm
not.
forgetting the actual football player, Quentin Aaron's character's name now, but he was a good character.
Michael Orr.
Michael, yeah, he plays it well too. But again, I'm not saying they're bad characters. They're just a little generic, and the actors did good job, good performances.
So Brad Pitt's character at the end, he makes the decision to kill John Doe, which is interesting because as the hero of the story, we're conditioned to believe that he would make the higher choice, and he didn't. He Harvey dented. He had a bad day and became a bad guy basically, and we don't know what happens to him at the end. After what happens, but we can assume. Morgan Freeman's character is interesting because he's the generic old grizzled, I'm on my way to retirement, but then doesn't and decides that the city is worth trying to save. They had the complete opposite experiences, and I liked that aspect of it. With Blindside, they're playing real people, and so there's only so much character development you can do. Like, they try to show the characters as flawed in some way or another, but at the end of the day, they still have to get approval from the actual people of how they're portraying them. And so it's not going to show them in as much of a negative light, which I liked in Seven, showing these characters' flaws.
I don't know if you watched Blindside, But the characters in that were, both of them were very flawed. We're talking about Sandra Bullock and I don't remember the actor's name, Michael or
Quentin Aaron.
Quentin Aaron.
That's funny that you guys had that backwards.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the point is, the whole movie is about character development. Is about these people relying on each other. Sandra Bullock, takes in Quentin Aaron.
Yeah.
And thinks that she's helping him out, but honestly, she ends up becoming a much better person herself. She learns a lot. They both do from each other, and they both grow in that relationship. They both have arcs, and they both grow together as characters, like in a way that's why the movie's good, is because the whole thing is about character development.
I think what Daniel was trying to get at was The Blind Side is based on a true account, and you can't have Sandra Bullock's character suddenly get delivered a box with Quentin Aaron's head in it, because that's just not how the story happened.
Well,
The director has to stick to a kind of outline, I guess, of how the story actually played out, and they can still work with it, still make it interesting. Otherwise, it wouldn't be interesting, and Sandra Bullock wouldn't have been nominated for an Oscar.
She won an Oscar.
Oh,
I checked. She won both the Oscar and the Razzie.
The point is, and the Razzie.
The Razzie. She's only one of 4 actresses to do it.
The point is, there's freedom in how they play the character, but a set place of where the character has to go, and only so much character development based on that.
Sure, but compared to 7, there wasn't much character development, if any.
There wasn't a whole.
There's good character interaction.
I
There
think
was
the
great
characters
character
were
interaction.
good character interesting characters for sure, but the development by far goes to The Blind Side.
Because Morgan Freeman was still the grizzled cop who had just seen a little bit more stuff.
But
Brad Pitt had gone backwards by the end of the movie in his development.
But that's still development.
Sure.
They're not stagnant.
Backwards on the moral scale, but still forward in development.
Yeah, and like Morgan Freeman's character, like he has such a drastic change of heart, and it's only brought about with just 2 lines, or 2 words, or I guess 3. 3, 4 syllables.
Math is hard.
Math is hard, man. So are words. But then, and Brad Pitt's character, of course, just had that total regression back to this primal self, which is what Kevin Spacey's character wanted.
Kevin Spacey is probably the most interesting.
Because we still know nothing about him.
Right, and that's probably why, but everybody else you could replace with anybody else. Whereas in Blind Side, if you take away those specific characters, you're left with nothing. The reason Blind Side was good was because of the emotion, and the reason there's emotion there is because you care about the characters.
I think kind of the reason I was having such a hard time voting for the story is because the story is accented by the characterization in Blind Side. The story is only good because the characters are good.
Exactly.
The characters, kind of like you said in 7, it could have been anybody, I guess, that John Doe could have targeted.
And see, that's one of the reasons why I was fighting so hard for the story in 7, is because, yes, technically the story could happen to anyone else. I like how these characters acted in the story and their characterization, but it is the story that's important in 7 versus in Blind Side where it's the characters that are important.
They just kind of accent the other.
Yeah. It's the narrative versus the characters type of a movie.
I will be voting for Blind Side on characters.
I think I will too.
Voting for 7, but whatever.
I wanted to say it so bad.
Almost.
Not gonna do it.
Rewatchability. 7's so much more rewatchable.
I would give it to 7, absolutely. And
It's
that's
a lot
kind
more
of
intense.
That's how it is with emotional movies. You watch them and you feel really emotional, but it's hard to do again because being emotional is hard. 7 is a crime procedural. I mean, they have a ton of shows. on TV.
And it's comfortable to slip into.
Right, with a new episode every, week, and people like watching that. It's because it's fun to watch, which is why 7 has more rewatchability. Now, on the other hand, it is harder to watch.
Yeah.
It is hard to watch, and there's actually one specific scene, the one, that I have to skip every time, and I'm an adult.
Right. And so, at the very least, I'm going to give this to 7, but it does, take a hit with how hard to watch it actually is.
Yeah.
But I guess that's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about more the enjoyment of the movie rather than the actual gore.
I've rewatched 7 several times.
I thought you were hoping to say 7.
I was
You
about
just
to.
watched it 7 times and kept it there like never again.
Never again. I've only seen Blindside once, and that was too much enough for me.
I haven't seen Blindside since it came out, mostly just because I haven't really had the opportunity. I also haven't seen 7 more than once because I haven't had the opportunity.
I think I've watched both 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, I'm voting for 7. It's a lot more enjoyable and just, easier to digest, easier to get into. It's not easier to digest, easier to get into.
Absolutely. Merits in genre.
Wait, what were you voting? Oh, you were voting 7. You're right. I'm sorry.
We all voted 7.
Yeah,
It's
right.
not like it would have mattered.
Merits in genre.
So, stick with me here. I think one of the things about 7 is that impact. In 95, there just weren't too many movies that were that visceral of a crime drama that you felt could potentially be real. This was something that totally launched Brad Pitt, Morgan Freeman, and David Fincher's career just into the stratosphere. It was super critically, it was a cult hit, which means critically acclaimed, but nobody saw it in theaters. But it still has a cult following, and a lot of people still talk about it. There's still videos being put on YouTube about it. And I think that because of the discussion, specifically of the ending, that it has lasted so long that I think that it deserves the merits in genre spot.
Name me one better sports-related family drama than Blindside.
42?
Remember the Titans?
Rudy?
Family drama.
It was family.
Radio?
They became a family.
I do think Remember the Titans is better than Blindside, but that's subjective and a totally different ball.
Saturday Night Lights?
Fine, 7 can have merits in genre.
Not to say Blindside wasn't great. I think it did a lot for its genre. The problem is its genre doesn't get talked about nearly as much as 7's
It
genre.
had a very specific genre. 7 had a more broad genre that you can fit a lot more into, and you have a lot more to compare it to.
Just
For when it comes out on top on something like that.
So 7 for merits.
Sure.
Yeah.
Which is where we move into our next category.
Emotional impact.
And this is where I take the win.
Well, you're not wrong unless
So
you like being super uncomfortable, because 7 did it extremely well.
here's my thing. Yes, you're right, and in all seriousness, if it was going to come to straight emotional impact, if 100 people were watch the two movies back to back, they would vote Blindside.
Right. Well, hold on.
But
I wouldn't say that this category is necessarily about which one causes emotion. I would say it's more about which one causes the emotion that the movie was trying to cause. Mm-hmm. So if 7 is trying to make you uncomfortable, it definitely did a really good job. It did a really good job at that. And it's trying to make you, feel, what's the word I'm looking for?
gross, disgusting, uncomfortable.
Yeah, just violent with rage. It definitely pulled that out of you, because as you're watching, it's hard to watch. You turn away, and that's what they're going for. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't discredit 7 at all on this category. But what was Blindside going for? It was trying to make you cry. It was trying to make you feel closer to your family. And they definitely did that, and they did that the whole way through. And I think that's a more important emotion to feel. But
In general, I think that it is, yes, more important emotion to feel closer to your family than to feel fear.
right, but at the same time, like that's what I'm saying is like it's not about which one's more important of emotion. It's about which one did a better job at conveying its emotion.
So I will concede that yes, Blindside had the more emotional impact. However, I want it to be known that it's a dumb movie and I hate it.
I'm not a huge fan of the football aspect either. Like, I could care less whether Michael made it to the NFL or not. The point that The Blind Side made to me, and what I think is the more important emotional part, is that he finally felt accepted in a family scenario. Like, I'm thinking specifically the one scene, the only one I really remember, is when he gets in a car accident with the younger kid, and he like puts his arm out to save him from the airbag, which breaks his arm, which stuns his football career, inevitably. That's more emotional to me, not because, oh no, how is he gonna do the football, but more of, he felt comfortable enough with this family that he was willing to save the kid, you know? That's more emotionally impactful to me than the football.
Right. And it really wasn't as much about the football. It was about the family relationship.
I understand that, but just having that background of it's a football, like it's even tangentially connected to football, I hated it.
Well, let me put it this way. I'm not a big fan of murder. And the fact that Seven was connected to murder made me feel like it was kind of a dumb movie.
And you can absolutely feel that way, and I don't think that your feelings are less valid because of that.
Well, that's weird because
So it was weird.
I was being sarcastic.
Anyway,
I'm not saying your feelings are invalid. I'm just saying you're dumb.
So it's really
not as
weird.
dumb as The Blind Side. Oh!
Oh!
Alright, so, yeah, Blindside wanted this one, I guess, and I hate it for
That's
it.
weird to see such an iconic movie as Seven that's truly talked about more go down to The Blind Side, but that's how this category is broken up, and well, that's just
That's why
how it happened.
That's why we talk about these things.
Congratulations to The Blind Side, I guess.
Sometimes you just are on a roll, you're feeling good that day, and you come in with some better arguments. What can I say? Matt started off 1-7, and he went with Blindside.
I really did. Wow. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Never thought that would happen.
And I knew I could do it too.
You see
Proud of
depravity and
myself.
sin on every corner of
Well,
the
guys,
street.
it's been fun. We're gonna go ahead and draw our next movies. We're gonna, prepare for those. I'm gonna talk to Daniel about why he hates football so much because there are worse sports out there.
I don't discount that there's worse sports, but there are very few sports that are created specifically to make men violent in peacetime and then leave those men with lasting brain injuries that then cause them to commit crimes, all controlled by some of the richest white people in the world. Anyway, my
What
movie
in the world
is
just happened?
is the live action Jungle Book.
Die Hard.
Are you serious?
So we're just gonna skip this one, Die Hard 1, and so what's next?
If we had to talk about Jason X, we have to talk about Jungle Book. I like Jungle Book. It was good. Let's see you next time.
Bye.